Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. I'm familiar with the name. I'm familiar with the name.
Joining me now is a frequent guest of the show, former FBI Special Agent, whistleblower as well, Kyle Seraphin.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public, and we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called The Kyle Seraphin Show. Follow him on Twitter. I'm Sebastian Gorka. I'll call you later. We'll talk guns. We'll talk optics.
Perfect, man. God bless you, brother. Thank you for standing up for the truth, man. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks. Well, so Kyle, thank you so much for joining us. Great chatting with you.
Kyle Seraphin, thank you.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Audio.
Steve, we got no mic from you, friend.
Do I get it now? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
That is the amateur. That is clearly showing that I'm the Garfunkel of the Simon Garfunkel relationship that Kyle Seraphin and Steve Friend have. Sorry. Good morning, Seraphins. Welcome to the show for a Friendly Friday, October 27th. Obviously, Kyle is big timing us once again on this day, but that's okay. We have a Friendly Friday in store for you. I'm really excited to be here. I've got a full show in store for you. And Kyle's out in Las Vegas at the premiere for Police State. He's going to be hosting a digital or a virtual event there with Dinesh D'Souza's daughter, and he's left the captain seat to me to handle on a Friendly Friday. So I'm excited to be here for you. I'm not going to be alone. I've got a couple guests lined up today. I want to send you off into your weekend with lots of information, with some laughs and some things to think about. But before we get to any of that, I want to pay some bills here, and then we can get started. So the first thing I want to do is acknowledge the OG sponsor of the Kyle Seraphin Show, and that is the Patriot Cooler. Normally, I have Ryan pull up the video of him breaking international law and going over the southern border with his Patriot Cooler. But I think it's more appropriate today to talk about how we have Halloween coming up next week, but then we're going to be in rush to the Christmas season. So I think that everybody should look at the OG sponsor, promo code Kyle for Patriot Coolers. And look, these are these cups everybody's got, these coolers, everybody needs them. We all got them in our shelves. The lids are all mismatched, one cup to another. I know my kids can't keep them straight, but they make a really great product. They've supported the Kyle Seraphin Show from the beginning, and I would encourage you all just to look what their products are and then continue to benefit us. They benefit the Kyle Seraphin Show. They benefit vets for this country, and it's an American company. So do yourself a favor when you're considering your Christmas shopping this year. Look over at Patriot Coolers. I am excited today to bring you a whole bunch of stuff. Kyle, like I said, he's big timed us. A lot of that is thanks to the Seraphin Nation as it's grown by leaps and bounds over this last year. And make sure you're liking and subscribing to this show. If you're on Rumble, make sure that green thumb is up, and that will help this show continue to grow. It will help Kyle continue to go to big events like the virtual premiere for Police State or Tim Pool, and ultimately let me sit in this chair and screw up the audio. So really, you're helping me, which is the most important thing. But I want to get to our first guest today, and he's a multi-visitor to the Kyle Seraphin Show. That's the great Steve Baker, now of the Blaze News. Steve, thank you so much. I know I reached out to you yesterday. Look, when I got the tap on the shoulder, I was going to come in and host. I immediately thought of a couple of things that you've brought to the forefront and was preparing to speak to those. And then I thought, well, I know that guy, and he's got a smooth, sultry voice, and I want to have him come on because the fans deserve a primary source. So thank you for joining me this morning.
Yeah, well, that voice always happens this early in the morning. It's I had a friend of mine years ago who used to be Broadway theater guy. And he was, this big, tall, gorgeous black man who he's been in a bunch of movies, and he told me because he had that that James Earl Jones kind of voice, and I mentioned that to him one time, and he goes, oh yeah, he goes, I was doing some studio work with James Earl Jones one time. He was like doing voiceover in the next studio next to me up in New York, and I asked him, I said, how do you prepare for a deal? And he said, I go out, and he said, every morning before I do a voiceover, he said, I smoke a Newport.
That's a pro right there, man. Yeah. For sure. All right. Well, I'm glad to have you here. Last time you were here on a Friendly Friday a couple of weeks ago, I know it was one of the most viewed programs that Kyle's had in the history of the show. We talked in depth for a couple hours about the Oath Keepers trial, and you really had some great information. I would encourage anybody to go back in the archives and look at that. But we do have a video prepared to bring folks up to speed, so we can really kind of enter into a conversation, get an update from you, Ryan. It's video one. If you could prepare that for us, it's a couple minutes long, folks. But obviously, like I said, I'm the Garfunkel here. I'm going to turn it over to the GOAT, great Glenn Beck, and those over at the Blaze to bring us up to speed here in a couple minutes. Go ahead and roll that for me, Ryan.
Did Pelosi's security chief perjure himself in the Oath Keepers trial?
Oath Keepers founder Stuart Rhodes has been sentenced to 18 years in prison.
The Oath Keepers are extremists who promote a wide range of conspiracy theories and sought to act as a private paramilitary force for Donald Trump.
The one thing that the government was absolutely intent upon doing was not allowing anything that painted the Oath Keepers in a positive light. These are videos that were never released to the defense attorneys.
The U.S. Capitol Police Special Agent David Lazarus saying that the violence that the rioters brought to the Capitol never ended for many of us. The trauma had reached into our homes, our personal lives, and our loved ones.
The story and the testimony from Special Agent, now this is Capitol Police Special Agent David Lazarus, when he heard the gunshot at 2:43, 2:44,
14:43 hours,
that he was down in the tunnels escorting senators to the other Senate office buildings, and that's quite a long distance away from the House chamber.
The Capitol Police officer assigned to the protective detail of then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi on January 6th appears to have given false testimony about his whereabouts.
We tracked him all the way through the tunnels.
They essentially created a script for him and put him in a place with a tale to tell that never happened.
He was then shown in court a video clip of 4 Oath Keepers standing in front of Dunn. Lazarus was asked, "Are these the individuals you observed?" Yes. At any point in these 3 or 4 interactions in this space, did you observe any sort of anything but antagonistic conversation? No, that's correct. He said this under oath.
In great detail, he describes what he saw, and it just did not happen.
It couldn't have happened because he was a half a mile away in another part of the building.
If we were living in normal times, the people that had been convicted, they would be released because this is perjury.
We have a high-ranking Capitol Police special agent with that designation who was the head of Nancy Pelosi's security detail, who was brought in specifically to corroborate the testimony of another Capitol Police officer with shaky testimony himself.
Get the f*** out of here!
We are waiting on the release of this video, the permission to show it, right here on The Blaze. when we release a day in the life of Harry Dunn on January 6th, it will contradict every single thing he has ever said about that day.
Special thanks to the Blaze Media for doing that video. For anybody who was not watching on Rumble, maybe getting the podcast on iTunes, make sure you give us a 5-star review there while you're there. But there is some text there where it says, and this is what I want to get from you today, Steve, that the Blaze is in possession of that video, and we talked about that a few weeks ago. But due to the motion to vacate the speakership, the deal you had negotiated with Kevin McCarthy was now kind of put into limbo. Can you bring us up to speed on actually what that agreement was, and then now that we have found a new speaker, what your expectations are?
Yeah, let's start by putting one big piece of misinformation to bed forever, at least for those who are watching this. Everyone thinks that when they get access to this 41,000 hours worth of Capitol CCTV footage from January 6th, that somehow magically that Congress or the Capitol Police or somebody or McCarthy just hands over a hard drive and gives us all that video. That's not what happens. Everybody thinks that Tucker Carlson, when they did their couple of nights of video reveals from that footage, that they were just given all that video, and then why won't they release it all? Why won't Tucker release it all? I get accused every single day on Twitter or X, whatever it's called now, of not releasing all the video. I don't have all the video. Blaze doesn't have all the video. What we're given is access. There's 3 consoles at the O'Neill building. It's a congressional House of Representatives office building there in the Capitol complex. And it's a private secure room. You can't get in there without a staffer allowing you in. And then we get access to 3 consoles. And then everybody says, well, if you've got access, why aren't you recording it? Why don't you put in a flash drive? And it's very tightly monitored. We can't use our recording devices. We have to take our phones and we have to set them across the room. We can't have them near the console. And then once we have reviewed and we've logged down or written down by hand the camera numbers and the timestamps that we want, then we submit those to the committee. It's one of the House Administration subcommittees. We submit that to them for review, and then if they're approved, then they give us those clips. And then after that's over with, once we then put together, like this presentation you showed right there, once we put a presentation together with the clips that we have harvested, then we have to we have to submit that back to them for final approval for security concerns. And there's parts of the building they don't want seen. If you remember when Tucker rolled his things out back last March, they blurred some walls out. Like the QAnon shaman was walking down the hallway and they had an entire wall blurred out. I don't know what they were blurring out, but that's the kind of things that we have to get permission to do, and they have to run through those security concerns. So I hate to go through laying that groundwork, but it's been a pain in my ass for months now, ever since Tucker Carlson's producers called me the first time and asked me what they should be looking at. I've been having to deal with this question. So what ended up happening is you're right on literally what we refer to as the euphemistic or metaphorically as the 11th hour before we were going to release our story about Special Agent David Lazarus. We got a call from the House committee staffer in charge that basically is the gatekeeper to the videos. And he said, you can't release. And I said, well, what do you mean we can't release? Our story's coming out tomorrow morning at 7:00. And then Glenn is going to go straight to it live on the air at 9:00 in the morning Eastern. What do you mean we can't release? And he said, yeah, he said, McCarthy's seat has been vacated. He's out. And as a result of that, we lost all of our permissions to even do the security reviews. And I tried, to explore other avenues and possibilities on how and why we might be able to go ahead and release. But they put their foot down. Now, this is the interesting part, Steve, is legally they had handed us the video. It's ours. We can do with it whatever we want to. It's like a document that gets leaked. You leak a court sealed document into the public sphere. Well, then, oops, as long as you weren't the leaker and they can't trace it back to you, you're not in trouble. But if you're the person that posted after it was leaked to you, you can do that. And it's the same thing with those videos. We had no legal reason we couldn't release, but we did have a gentleman's agreement, so to speak, with Congress about the rules. And obviously, we don't want to violate that, and we don't want to lose access. So we stuck to the agreement, and we are still waiting today, even though we have a new speaker, Mike Johnson.
I wanted to talk to you about that. I mean, you're a Louisiana guy. I believe you're in Shreveport. He's from that parish, or however they break things up in Louisiana, a little bit funky down there. And I saw that you shared a picture of him. I had a small interaction with Congressman Johnson. He's a member of the Weaponization Committee. He was definitely one of the better questioners when Garrett and I testified a few months ago. I don't want to project how he's going to be as a speaker. I think that that time will reveal that. But specifically to your concerns, as you've been sort of like waiting for the last few weeks on this, you might be still in a state of limbo. Optimistic, pessimistic? Do you think you're going to get that similar gentleman's agreement from the new speaker?
I'm very optimistic about it for a couple of reasons. Number one, I don't personally have a relationship with the new speaker, Mike Johnson. We're from the same hometown, Shreveport, Louisiana. I'm actually sitting in Shreveport right now, just by coincidence. I'm passing through back to North Carolina right now from Dallas. And I did have the opportunity to meet with Mike Johnson back in May of this year. And it wasn't really Mike that I was looking to meet. He was doing a fundraiser here in downtown Shreveport, and Jim Jordan was his keynote speaker at his fundraiser. And I was planning an ambush on Jim Jordan because he was the guy I was trying to get at. And the reason why, and you'll appreciate this since you've been before the Weaponization Committee, is that Jordan had been on the record, not publicly, but very, very vocally behind closed doors, that he was not going to deal with January 6th related matters on weaponization. And so I had some stories that I knew I could not tell without his assistance or without his investigator's assistant, and that were important, that should be dealt with by weaponization. So through a mutual friend of Mike Johnson's, who's also very intimately involved with the January 6th stuff, is one of Stewart Rhodes' attorneys, also a Louisiana attorney by the name of Ed Tarpley. He lives a couple hours south of Shreveport in Alexandria. And Ed and I had become very, very familiar with each other, very well acquainted over the course of the Oath Keepers trial last year. And as a result of that, when he knew that I was trying to get my claws into Jordan, that he said, he called me up and he said, hey, Jordan's doing he's speaking at a fundraiser for Mike Johnson right there in Shreveport, downtown Shreveport. Told me, he gave me the date, the time, the place. I live 1,000 miles away, and I said, I'll be there. And so Tarpley got me into the event. And as a result of that, he prepped them. And so it wasn't a real ambush. He was, Tarpley's very involved in Louisiana politics, has been, and he and Mike Johnson have been dear friends for 25 years. So he knew what to do to make the way easy for me. And as a result of that, I got a special amount of time. I was expecting, 60 seconds with each of the congressmen at that time. I ended up getting 10 minutes apiece with each of them. I was able to make my pitch to Jordan, and Jordan wrote my name and number down, stuck it in his front pocket, and I've been working with his investigators at weaponization ever since, almost every day. And I told them both. I said, I have two stories to tell that I cannot tell without your help and without your protection.
All right. So, well, I mean, at least there's a little bit of optimism. I think and you've expressed to me, it's just absolutely heartbreaking. I know you've done a ton of work, but I think you and I would agree that you would gladly hand that over and get no credit, no acclaim, no compensation if it meant getting some people who were denied their due process rights out of their current circumstances where they're in a gulag. So I'm happy to hear that you're happy and optimistic about it, and hopefully in the near future the new speaker will we'll give you access to that video. I know it's in the vault of the Blaze, which looks eerily like the Ark of the Covenant warehouse that is in the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
That's right.
And certainly Glenn likes to keep lots of artifacts back there. So I want to pivot to the other reason that the other issue that I was going to discuss. And again, I knew the great baritone voice, and I wanted to give you credit and give you the opportunity. Primary source it. You talked a few weeks ago about you had some interactions with Harry Dunn, the gentle giant, who is going to be releasing this book. And it came out earlier this week. You had advanced access to it, did sort of a review of it. And then earlier this week, one of the first stories that the Blaze News, the new news outlet and arm the Blaze is offering, publish your story about some inconsistencies in Officer Dunn's book with what you were able to find in the surveillance camera footage. Can you kind of walk us through your story? And Ryan, if you want to pull up the article, this is going to be Article 1, and that way folks know what they're looking for. They can go to the Blaze and get it. It's called January 6th and the N-word that wasn't. So, Steve, can you get it? No spoiler alerts. I mean, I think it's definitely worth it. It's a good read, but can you give us a thorough 30,000-foot view of what went on with the story?
Yeah, I was really honored that the Blaze launched their new website with my story here on Harry Dunn. And of course, this is something I've been working on for a long time, so it was gratifying in that regard. But the bottom line is that Harry Dunn became a national figure. He became the hero of January 6th because he did initially on BuzzFeed an anonymous, unnamed source interview with one of their writers in which he told this story about being subjected to, on numerous occasions throughout the day on January 6th, horrible, racial slurs thrown at him and other officers. And so as that whole thing developed, he was eventually outed. He came out that he was the source for that story. And the reason why he was unnamed to begin with is because, he was a Capitol Police officer, not really supposed to be talking about what they do on the job, to the press. But as a result of somebody supplying for him a very high-priced attorney by the name of Mark Zaid out of D.C., and then also because the story, as he told it, even as an unnamed source, resonated with the narrative of the day, that all these people that attacked the Congress and attacked the Capitol building, the insurrectionists were all racist, white supremacists. Every one of them were carrying Confederate flags, that sort of thing. Is that this story fit the narrative so well that he was given special dispensation from the Capitol Police to begin basically doing as many interviews carte blanche as he wanted to, while the rest of the force is under gag orders and NDAs and such as that.
Media tour for his book.
Yeah, and he didn't have the book deal yet, but that was forthcoming pretty quickly. And so this story about him being called the N-word over and over again became grander and grander and more exaggerated, to the point where he then finally lumped that in with his interaction with the Oath Keepers that day inside or just outside of the Great Rotunda. And that event took place while that encounter was happening. And he came up with a story about this lady in a pink MAGA shirt who led the crowd in a chant of, this giant black man, because he's 6'7", 300+ pounds. And she started chanting at him that he was an N-word Biden voter, boo, N-word Biden voter, boo. And that 20, 40, as many as 50 people, he said, in some accounts, were chanting this at him, except that in the most recorded video event in the history of the world, there's not a single episode, a single incident here, 2.5+ years later, of there being not only one single recorded event in all the Metro Police body cams of any of them ever being called a racial epithet. There's not a single example of that on anyone's cell phone, of which the FBI has captured, thousands and thousands, unknown thousands of hours worth of that video. And of course, then there's the Capitol CCTV, which doesn't have audio recording, but we could watch the event that he described in the place where he said that large crowd was chanting, and we can see that never happened. When a crowd is chanting, there's physical body language that takes place in a chant. And we have enough cameras walking by that area. We have actual body-worn cameras from the Metropolitan Police walking by that area. And then, of course, we have the CCTV, and it just never happened. He made it up.
Wow. Well, I mean, you had access to his book. You did, as a media person, I guess you could write a book review on it. Interested, if you were an English professor and you're giving it a grade, we don't have to give it a letter grade. Let's just say like there's 3 tiers. Tier 1 would be like To Kill a Mockingbird, or like the U.S. Grant memoirs. Tier 2 would be like The Jungle and a Howard Zinn, like well written but completely inaccurate, bordering on false. And Tier 3 would be See Spot Run.
It's. I'll tell you what. I'm gonna insert something between The Jungle and See Spot Run. Let's go with The Jungle Book.
Okay.
First of all, Harry Dunn did not write this. I mean, let's just be perfectly honest. This is how those book deals work. More than likely, Hachette Books, which is the 3rd largest book publisher in the world, likely didn't even pay for his advance. Typically, when award book deals are given to these celebrity type political voice narrative sponsoring, narrative supporting type authors, there's an outside foundation like a Soros or somebody like that who comes in and gives the publisher that money through the foundation, and then the check is written to the author, and then they bring in a ghostwriter, and the ghostwriter interviews them, spends hours with them, several days with them, so they get all the personal stories and they get the accounting of the events, and then they go in and they write the book for them. And there's some back and forth between the editors and the assigned author and the ghostwriter, but that's how that happens. Uh-huh. And so it's clear from my own interactions with Harry Dunn, and having watched many, many, many interviews, I've watched basically every interview he's ever given, listened to every podcast he's ever done, as I've been getting into the head of this man in preparation for this series that we're doing, that I can tell you he didn't write that book.
Fair enough. I mean, as a published author now, I feel like, look, I was a cop. I kind of feel a little bit better about myself. I put the keystrokes in myself. So
good. Congratulations, because that's But you weren't awarded a narrative supporting deal.
Correct. And didn't get a congressional medal.
So not only was he awarded a deal for his service to Nancy Pelosi's narrative, or her directive to establish and preserve the narrative of January 6th, that he was, look, I'm not going to disparage him personally. I don't have any desire to do that. And I've met him. I've spent time with him. We've talked a lot over the last couple of months in preparation for this. I did everything I could to turn him from the dark side. If I go into the James Earl Jones voice again, I did. I worked on him, and I, a week out from the publishing of our first story, I sent my final note to him, and I said, Harry, you asked, and this is what I said to him. I said, Harry, you asked me how I was going to write your story, and I told you the first time we met that was going to be up to you. This is your last chance. And I haven't heard from him since. So, look, if even though we couldn't be, more polar opposites in our political worldview and how we see things that happened on January 6th, he's the kind of guy that, after I've spent the time with him that I have, I could call him a friend. But unfortunately, he's also the guy who not only told the lie about this racial and created this racial narrative around January 6th, which is totally unsupported not only by the evidence but also by all the other Capitol Police officers. The black Capitol Police officers all tell me to the man, every one of them that I've interviewed, didn't happen. And those guys that were there on the day say, no, I was never, I never heard the word. never heard the N-word. I never got, disparaged in any way as in relation to my race or my blackness. And they don't believe Harry. And so not only did he make up this story for whatever reason, but then the rest of his stories about the day fall apart as well under the scrutiny of the video leading up to and after his encounter with the Oath Keepers, which, of course, that testimony and the follow-up testimony that supported his by Special Agent David Lazarus were key in convicting those guys of the crimes that they didn't commit.
That's going to be the sad story. I think that's going to be the takeaway eventually when, look, truth's going to come out here. And I appreciate you, Steve, for staying on this story. You've done some yeoman's work on it. You've been committed to it for over a year. And I will really look forward to having you back. Either Kyle will have you back. I'll have you back if I have my own show at that point, because I think that you've covered some great ground here and exposed a lot. And thank you for joining me here this morning. I want to encourage everybody here, if you're not already, Steve's a great follow on the X's, on the Twitters. It's at TPC4USA, the Pragmatic Constitutionalist. And you also are at the Blaze News now as a contributor. Thanks for joining me this morning, brother, and you have a great weekend.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And look, I think Steve kind of summed it up there, give us a great transition point to what I want to get to. But before I get to that, I do want to touch on a second sponsor here this morning. That's going to be The Loop. That's Catholic Vote. They're a sponsor of the show. And I was having a discussion with my folks actually recently about where you get your news from. The Loop has become a integral part of my news gathering and my learning of what's going on every day. Folks, if you're not getting it, it's free. Get your email in there. You get a nice email every day, 6 o'clock ish a.m. You will have it hit your email. You will be in the know on what's happening. I just pulled it up this morning before we went on and saw that there's some reporting on the drag event that's going to be going on at my alma mater, University of Notre Dame. Obviously, that's a hot button issue there. It's a Catholic school, allegedly. It's a hot button issue for me as well, as having graduated from it. It's spurring me to now say that when people ask me where I went to school, I tell them my high school. So some good news in there. I encourage you all to sign up for it and really drop some knowledge on folks, because it's always bringing one or two stories that you don't see anywhere else. So back to where I want to transition to, and we are approaching Halloween, Festivus in our household. I've got two little kids. Obviously, superheroes are still really relevant. As that movie genre is sort of in its tail end. It's on the back nine, no question about it. But the costumes are still large, and around the state of Florida, man, the month of October is basically all Halloween. The weather's great. Kids can trick or treat at all these different events, multiple events throughout the month. They really, they get their money's worth. Parents get their money's worth on the costumes. We get to go to multiple events, and I want to talk about today some of the issues that came about in the original Batman, or not original, but the Christopher Nolan trilogy Batman series, because I think that they're pretty relevant to what's going on today. Ryan, to launch us off, can you cue up the video 4 here? And I think it's relevant to also what Steve was bringing on, and we can connect that. Why don't you go ahead and roll that?
It wasn't considered an honor. It was considered a public service.
Harvey, the last man that they appointed to protect the Republic was named Caesar, and he never gave up his power.
Okay, fine. You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Look, whoever the Batman is, he doesn't want to do this for the rest of his life. How could he? Batman is looking for someone to take up his mantle.
Someone like you, Mr. Dent?
Maybe. If I'm up to it.
What if Harvey Dent is the Caped Crusader?
All right, die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Obviously, Steve Baker cautioned Harry Dunn about his decisions he's making. He was given congressional medals, lauded as a hero. And now as his book has come out and all the inconsistencies and flat out lies are going to be exposed by great journalists like Steve, I think he might live long enough to become the villain. David Lazarus obviously has a long and storied career across multiple speakers, and the man has proven to have committed perjury in court to convict the Oath Keepers. Hero now becoming the villain. Suspendables in general. I think we've proven through our actions and what our willingness to do is that we're willing to die on our shield, come back on our shield, and which is why I want to bring in my second guest. Definitely a man who continues to be a hero. The GOB actual Garrett O'Boyle is going to join me here to talk about his position on this. Quickly though, Garrett, you good for Halloween? All the girls got their other costumes?
So this is where we are set apart a little bit from the world. We don't really participate in Halloween, which we could probably do a full show on, but we will still give them. We will give them some candy still, but okay. But yeah.
All right. I respect it. Hey, look, my boys have, they don't tend to do the scary costumes. They always doing the superhero stuff. Pretty positive. It's just a community event for us. I understand the pagan ritual to it, and we've actually had that conversation with them, and they just want to go out and get candy. Actually, my little guy doesn't even care about the costumes; he just wants the candy. He's never had a real costume; he just gets a hand-me-down every year.
Mm-hmm. What's cool for them is they have a real superhero as dad, so they could start dressing up as you in the future.
Oh man, you're too complimentary. But hey, you gotta allow me this story. So my older son. And we're going to be on the Batman topic today. I think of all the superheroes, look, he's got no superpowers. He's just like a cop, right? He's a real interesting character. He's sort of an anti-hero, and obviously in that Dark Knight movie, the Harvey Dent character, as we'll talk about, he's presented as the White Knight, but he does some pretty questionable things even before he ultimately turns villain. But when my oldest son was in preschool, he started getting obsessed with Batman, and wife bought him one of those like T-shirts that has the attached cape, and he wanted to wear it like every day. So she got like multiple shirts, so we were running laundry every day. And I go to pick him up from preschool, and the teacher says, "Hey, look, we have a problem." And he's a real good kid, so I'm a brand new parent. I'm like, "Oh, well, what's the problem?" And she goes, "He's not answering to his name anymore. He's insisting on being called Batman." and my immediate thought was like, if you were the father to somebody who got a Medal of Honor or became like president of the United States, you would be slightly less proud of myself at that point, because that's the most baller move any father could ever have for a son.
It's true.
So what are your thoughts on that sort of first perspective, the Harvey Dent, die a hero or live long enough to become a villain? You think that's sort of appropriate to what we're going to see from your Harry Dunns and David Lazaruses?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think just because as humans we're all fallible, and I think a lot of people who get thrust into situations like that as time goes on, they end up forgetting their integrity or the reason why they were coming forward and speaking up and speaking out, and it gets all about the accolades and the agenda and the notoriety. And I think we're starting to see the early stages of that with Mr. Dunn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's totally fair, and that's why we've been locked on to the principles of what it is to be suspendable. You draw that line and you won't cross it. You're not in it for any reason other than because you know what's right. So
yeah,
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And that's why everybody needs to go to the-suspendables.com, get your merch so that everybody knows that you're a friendly. When you're out there, you have your principles. Garrett's got some new merch going on there. Everything going well?
Yeah, it's going good. We dropped a new Substack tee earlier this week. It's black and the print is like green. I was going for for anybody who's ever been under nods. I was going for that kind of effect. And there's going to be some new stuff, some new shirts coming out soon, some more. And I'm working on others. Like you probably couldn't see this, but this is like a prototype hoodie that I've been working on. But I just
hold on, show us again, Garrett. We didn't see it. Yeah, there you go.
Solid.
I actually am going to go with a different hoodie just because even though this hoodie is very comfortable, the white with the black, I don't know, it just doesn't really go. So I found one that has black strings, so that'll look much better. And then just slowly working on stuff. I'm finally mostly caught up on orders. I was in the live chat earlier when you guys had Steve Baker on, and there's a couple orders that came through already this morning. And other than that, I'm pretty much caught up. I have like 5 of them behind me that are packaged up, ready to go. So hopefully I'll be able to maintain at least better than I had been previously with shipping and everything and stitching.
Your kids are not trick or treating. You got to put them to work with some labels or something, man. That's fantastic. Sure. Good to hear it.
Yeah. So but it's going good. It's a fun little hobby. I mean, it's weird, like I saw you tweeted out something about telling your parents how you were part of this movie Police State, and you said something like Bizarro World, and man, it certainly is that, like from FBI agent to author, and in a movie, and then in my case from FBI agent to pressing t-shirts. It's
t-shirt venture
bizarre.
Capitalist, man. You got to give yourself the time. It's going to take off. I know it.
I hope so.
All right. So I want to kind of hammer in on a little bit of the issues that Harvey Dent, this character, brought up in the second movie of the trilogy, in The Dark Knight. And Ryan, could you cue up video number 2? This is a discussion that they have about racketeering, RICO, and go ahead and roll it.
Look, give us the money and we'll talk about making a deal.
The money is the only reason I'm still alive.
Oh, you mean when they find out that you've helped us, they're gonna kill you?
Are you threatening my client?
No, I'm just assuming your client's cooperation with this investigation. As will everyone. No? Okay. Enjoy your time in county, Mr. Lau.
Wait! I won't give you the money, but I will give you my clients. All of them.
You were a glorified accountant. What could you possibly have on all of them that we could charge?
I'm good with calculation. I handled all their investments. One big pot.
Got it.
1 minute.
RICO. If they pooled their money, we can charge them all as one criminal conspiracy.
Charge them with what?
In a RICO case, if you can charge one of the conspirators with a felony, you can charge
all of them with it. That's great.
All right. RICO. I mean, sort of a weird thing to bring about in a superhero movie. But it actually is a real charge. I don't know if you ever encountered this in the FBI or as a cop. I actually, as a beat cop, charged RICO on a case.
Really?
Interestingly enough. And I think I probably thought of it because I saw the Batman movie. But I remember the discussion we had at Quantico where they were sort of giving you the broad strokes of what constitutes a conspiracy case. And it would be essentially you and I, or multiple people, you, me, Ryan, we agree that we're going to commit a crime. You have to have an agreement. And then secondly, you have to have one of us take an overt act in furtherance of that. So we decide we're going to come up with a bank robbery scheme, and Ryan goes and buys us the ski masks. Or you go and get us a car. Or I go and get us some firearms to perpetrate that robbery. That one act by any one of us, in combination with the agreement we have to ultimately commit the crime, that kind of lumps us into this pool together. And I think the actual spirit behind that makes a little bit of sense. I mean, obviously, it's used to go after these hardened criminals, organized crime, mafia, and because all elements up and down the chain of command were committing acts to further the organization's goals. But very much like civil asset forfeiture, as we heard months ago with Amy Nelson coming forward, it's been sort of weaponized and broadly interpreted by the FBI and by law enforcement around the country to go after people who really were not necessarily movers and shakers in a criminal organization, and it's casting a wide net. Look no further than what we saw with the Gretchen Whitmer case. There was the interview Kyle had yesterday with one of those guys who was fortunately acquitted. In that case, they were encouraging guys to go and do surveillance of the Whitmer cottage that was on the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And in the correspondence between the informant and the agent running the case, they said, get as many people as you can in the vehicle, because that would enhance the conspiratorial nature of it. That would allow them to get more people into the agreement that they are then eventually going to charge this racketeering, this RICO case on. And I want to bring a case forward that Garrett and I can talk about that. I've actually gotten. I'm excited because I've done some speaking events, and a couple people have actually brought this case out. I didn't think it got enough acknowledgement, and that's the Newburgh 4. Garrett, have you seen anything about Newburgh 4?
Yeah, I've heard of it for sure. But man, as you were talking, there's so much going through my head just from my time in the FBI, especially related to some January 6th stuff and your mention of the Fednapping hoax in Michigan and Eric Molitor's interview. There's so much. It's all just part of the weaponization and the lawfare, right? And as you know, I've been in the Old Testament a ton. So Isaiah 10:1 says, "Woe to those who make unjust laws, to those who issue oppressive decrees." And although the spirit of a RICO law may be good at its heart, because it's like, okay, we're going to use it to go after really bad guys who are good at being criminals and covering their tracks, it has become another weaponized piece of what the government is using against the citizens.
Yeah. Ryan, can you get video 5 number? Yes, number 5. This is going to be on the Newburgh 4. A lot of people don't really know the background for it. This is a news piece about it. And then we'll get into ultimately what's come out. There's been some court documents. There's been an update to the case. Go ahead and roll video 5 for us.
A victory in court for 3 men convicted in a terrorism sting more than a decade ago.
Police arrested the men last night as they were allegedly planting what they thought were real bombs outside a Jewish temple.
A federal judge ordering the release of Anta Williams, David Williams, and Laguerre Payne, 3 of the men known as the Newburgh 4, arrested for a plot to blow up synagogues in New York City and shoot down National Guard planes in upstate New York.
The suspects allegedly conducted surveillance and took photos of possible targets.
In a scathing decision, U.S. District Judge Colleen McMahon accusing FBI agents of trying to arrest petty criminals by radicalizing the men to participate in a plot she called an FBI-orchestrated conspiracy. McMahon adding, quote, "The real lead conspirator was the United States."
That sounds like strong language, but it's just a pure description of the facts of this case.
The judge also accusing the FBI of using a, quote, villain of an informant to prey on the poor, then manipulate the men to commit a fake crime in exchange for cash, materials, and even groceries.
The defense is certain to raise questions about the informant and whether these men were duped.
Every step of the way was all the FBI. These guys they had no driver's licenses. They couldn't find Google Maps of where these targets are that the FBI informant told them to use. I mean, they came up with not one single part of this plot. It was all the FBI.
That FBI informant, Shahid Hussein, who made headlines again when a stretch limo operated by his company crashed in rural New York, killing 20 people.
Manslaughter in the second degree.
Hussein now serving a 5 to.
All right. That's a news report about these guys, and I had the opportunity to read this document that the judge issued in this ruling that released them, and I think it kind of gives a little bit of background about this story. This is going to be article number 2, Ryan. It was a PDF that I sent you. I can think of nothing better than to read a couple of documents, a couple lines out of it to sort of give the viewers and the audience some background in this case, because this is just all too familiar. This is the tried and true playbook. Garrett and I have talked about it. Kyle and I have talked about it. But for the background of this actually happened about 13 years ago, October 2010. These David Williams, Anta Williams, and Laguerre Payne were convicted together with James Cromite of conspiracy, again, conspiracy, to use weapons of mass destruction, conspiracy to acquire and use anti-aircraft missiles, conspiracy to kill officers and employees of the U.S., 3 counts of attempted use of weapons of mass destruction, 1 count of attempted acquisition and use of anti-aircraft missiles, etc., all in connection with their participation in an FBI-orchestrated conspiracy to bomb a Jewish community center in the Bronx and destroy military aircraft at the New York Air National Guard Base, at Stewart Airport in Newburgh, New York, thus the Newburgh 4. And as you work through this, they were actually sentenced because of the enhancement for terrorist charges, mandatory minimum of 25 years. And if you read into it, the judge is pretty scathing in her remarks and says, a person reading the crimes of conviction in this case would be left with the impression that the offending defendants were sophisticated international terrorists committed to jihad against the United States. They were in reality hapless, easily manipulated, and penurious petty criminals. Again, those vulnerable people, the folks that we've been talking about. And the last part I'll read before I get your thoughts on this, Garrett. In more background to this case, in early April 2008, one of the defendants, Kromedi, by now unemployed and broke, reached out to Hussein, who's the informant, agreed to participate in a mission. Over the course of the next few weeks, at Hussein's direction, he recruited David and Anta Williams and Laguerre Payen to serve as lookouts while they planted the bombs. And the bombs obviously were manufactured by the FBI at this synagogue. So these guys were not even pushing the button. They were just basically on the corner as a lookout. Yep. None of the three defendants had any history as terrorists. They were impoverished, small-time grifters, drug users, street-level dealers who could use some money.
Yeah, exactly. And how often is that the case with crime? It's people looking for an opportunity because, yeah, they're they don't have a strong moral character and they're trying to get by, so they're selling dope or whatever. Or in this case, man, I'm really back on my heels, so sure, I'll agree to whatever, and I'll be a lookout. While you were talking, I pulled up that document and was skimming through it. The judge also said the real lead conspirator was the United States.
Yep.
But these guys' lives are ruined. I mean, they were locked away long enough. What do you do now? Well, I mean, how do you rectify that? And I'm going to agree with the judge that the real lead conspirator was the U.S. So who is going to be held to account now? Nobody. I bet you lots of promotions, lots of bonuses, lots of awards and other accolades were divvied about amongst the squad and whoever else, especially amongst the supervisors. And how many people put this in their, 954 to try to get that next promotion? And, this is something we see time and time again. And this is another thing we've talked about is this weaponization of the informant pool, which that's been going on for decades and decades.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and look, this is a 15-year-old case at this point. I mean, these guys are probably the agents who worked there. I would assume a large share of them are even retired on to the next thing.
Right.
They milked everything they could to get out of it. And these guys went away before iPhones were out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how are they going to adjust to the current society and have this on their record? Even, I don't know if the terrorist connection was going to be sort of expunged from them. If they're going to go apply for a job, do they have to tell them that they've been convicted of being a terrorist in the United States? What are your career prospects? And this is just the collateral damage because careers have to be advanced and the self-looking ice cream cone must be fed of the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on from Newburgh, Ryan, this is going to be video 3. Back to the Dark Knight, the mid-level offenders that Harvey Dent talks about. You go ahead and roll that one.
Well, I don't know about Mr. Lau's travel arrangements, but I'm sure glad he's back.
With word out, we hired the clown. He was right. You have to fix real problem. Batman.
I'm not aware of any participation by the Batman in the
Ah, boy, looks good on the tube. You sure you want to embarrass me in front of my friends, Lieutenant?
No, don't worry. They're coming too.
Have a nice trip. See you next fall.
712 counts of extortion, 849 counts of racketeering, 246 counts of fraud, 87 counts of conspiracy murder, 527 counts of obstruction of justice. How do the defendants plead?
549 criminals at once. How did you convince Cirillo to hear this farce?
She shares my enthusiasm for justice. After all, she is a judge.
Well, even if you blow enough smoke to get convictions out of Cirillo, you're going to set a new record at appeals for quickest kick in the ass.
It won't matter. The head guys make bail, sure, but the mid-level guys, they can't. They can't afford to be off the streets long enough for trial and appeal. They'll cut deals that include some jail time. Think of all you could do with 18 months of clean streets.
Does that sound like justice to you, Garrett, where you have a prosecutor who knows what he's doing, is going to be overturned immediately on appeal, but he sees the greater good. You have to break some eggs to make this omelet. And because these mid-level guys can't afford to pay for an attorney, they just cut the deal and go to jail.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like law enforcement. That sounds like the FBI. That sounds like many AUSAs and FBI agents. They know precisely what they're doing, which I think makes it all the more heinous. And, let's just stay in the realm of Batman. Yeah, okay. We can all agree that the bad guys are the bad guys, more or less. DC Comics is black and white when it comes to the character development. I know there's a little nuance there depending on your character, but these low-level guys, as Harvey Dent is talking about, let's all just agree they're criminals. They're bad. They need to be locked up. They're doing bad things, murder and selling dope, whatever. Okay, fine. But in the United States, they still have due process, and Harvey Dent is describing the precise end around that is used in real life by prosecutors and judges and FBI agents to quote unquote get justice. Does any of this sound just to anyone once you really start, peeling back the layers of the onion here? Like you said, he knows precisely what he's doing, and he's doing it anyways.
Exactly. This is the guy who has the power. And guys, we're noticing in the chat here, there's like over 1,000 watching, so make sure you're liking this show. As we continue to grow and I continue to get opportunities to fill this chair as Kyle gets big timed, then ultimately you're helping me. So keep doing the Lord's work out there, guys. Make sure you click the like. Make sure the thumb goes green on us. And actually, Garrett, when we were watching that, and we have this list of charges, I couldn't help but thinking about a certain orange-tinged person and all the charges and folks that were roped in. Which is why, Ryan, can you get ready with video number 6? But actually, first, let's pull up article number 4. This is Jenna Ellis, who was an attorney for the Trump campaign, and it was an announcement that she was, I guess, the third or fourth that was going to be pleading guilty in this Fulton County. From what I understand about, and I don't know about her allegiance at this point. I think she's a supporter of DeSantis, so there's a lot of infighting as the primary goes on. She's certainly a low-level, mid-level person in that organization in the fight over the election results in Georgia. And I know I've seen her do some interviews. It was projected she was going to need like $500,000 to defend herself here, and obviously couldn't afford to do that. Try to do a charitable arm, raised about, I guess, like $200. So she's still going to have some bills to pay here. And ultimately, it led to her pleading guilty, and she got to have what I think is a struggle session on national TV, and that's going to be video number 6. Ryan, can you pull that one up and roll it for us?
Thank you, Your Honor, for the opportunity to address the court. As an attorney who is also a Christian, I take my responsibilities as a lawyer very seriously, and I endeavor to be a person of sound moral and ethical character in all of my dealings. In the wake of the 2020 presidential election, I believed that challenging the results on behalf of President Trump should be pursued in a just and legal way. I endeavored to represent my client to the best of my ability. I relied on others, including lawyers with many more years of experience than I, to provide me with true and reliable information, especially since my role involved speaking to the media and to legislators in various states. What I did not do, but should have done, Your Honor, was to make sure that the facts the other lawyers alleged to be true were in fact true. In the frenetic pace of attempting to raise challenges to the election in several states, including Georgia, I failed to do my due diligence. I believe in and I value election integrity. If I knew then what I know now, I would have declined to represent Donald Trump in these post-election challenges. I look back on this whole experience with deep remorse. For those feelings.
Ryan, that's harsh, man. I mean, look, you can have the debate here. Is she going to die a hero? Is she going to take it all the way or live long enough to become a villain? Obviously, producer Ryan thinks she's now a villain. My point in bringing that up is, obviously, it's consistent with a mid-level person being forced to do something, and she was a lawyer. I mean, she was representing a client. I don't know about that. And then and now she's doing a North Korean style struggle session.
Yeah, my takeaway is there, and I don't know all the details of the case. However, man, dude, there's just so much. My favorite part is she references how I'm a lawyer and a Christian. So, okay, I wonder if she's ever read Isaiah 59:4 that says, "No one enters suit justly. No one goes to law honestly. They rely on empty pleas. They speak lies. They conceive mischief and give birth to iniquity." So she was on the receiving end of that at first, trying to raise $500,000 to try and defend herself, and didn't quite get there. So again, not knowing all the details, to me, sounds like she cut a deal. Part of that deal was a remorseful apology recorded to be released, and so to show her quote unquote remorse. And it also makes me think of when I was given the quote unquote opportunity to appeal the FBI's decision about a year ago. It was last October. And it was early October, but in my written portion of that, I put James 4:17, which says that for the person who knows the right thing to do and doesn't do it, for him, it's sin. And I wonder if that's part of her struggle session, is she knows that she failed to do the right thing. And she caved under pressure because the cost is too high. I can't risk going to prison. Okay, I'll change my tune and just accept the fact that, and even just say that, oh, I was wrong in how I was representing my client. Were you though? Because as a trained lawyer, and if you're representing Donald Trump, not only a former president, but a very wealthy businessman, I would imagine that you're a pretty damn good lawyer on top of it. And now suddenly, oh, if I knew then what I know now, things would have been different. Okay, well, which is the lie is my question, because I just, call me cynical if you want, but I have a hard time believing that she's being truthful at this point. She just caved, which we have seen so many times. We see it daily from our former colleagues. They just give in. If they're not a weaponized piece of the weaponized apparatchik themselves, willingly doing the bidding of the regime, then they're quiet minions going along to get along. And I think it has been credited to Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was martyred in Nazi Germany, who said, the silence in the face of evil is evil itself. And I mean, yeah. So if you're silent when you know evil is happening, you're complicit, which makes you just as evil.
Yep, I think that's well said. I'm glad you brought that back to our former, or I guess it's my former, your current colleagues, because you still are technically a suspended FBI agent. And I think we need kind of a palate cleanse over the debate over villain or hero when it comes to Ms. Ellis. And that's why I wanted to highlight, as we close the things out here, article number 3. Brian, this is the announcement from a power oversight about our fellow suspendable, Marcus Allen. Going to be bringing a lawsuit forward. It's appeal to the fact that he was retaliated against as a whistleblower. He's definitely a guy. Look, not to speak is to speak. He's definitely a quiet professional. He speaks to us in our private chats a little bit. He's definitely a bro as far as the suspendables are concerned. When his feet were put to the fire, he's fought tooth and nail. He's going to go out on his shield, and even if his career dies, he will die a hero here. I think you probably share my sentiment on that one.
I absolutely do. When things get tough, and as you know, they do, it ebbs and flows. And even with our little band of suspendables, sometimes it still feels like you're very alone on an island. And I think just Marcus's character and the way he has gone about this, it kind of reminds me of the first, 6-7 months or however long it was between my suspension and when we testified. it was difficult, as you know, because I was speaking with you and Kyle, behind the scenes still. I struggled with that, and now getting to know Marcus, I'm sure he does too. But we all have our role to play, and like you said, he will return on his shield or not at all, and that's just the way you have to be. I'm sure there are people out there, maybe not in our live chat or watching the show, other than the ones at SecD, who probably think, man, these guys are just alarmists, and it's like, no, the building is on fire. I think I said that last time I was with Kyle, but the building's on fire, and we're trying to usher everybody out and say, hey, don't you see the fire? Like, it's burning down, and we have to go, because this is, I mean, just look at history. Time and time again, this is how you get a tyrannical, authoritarian, totalitarian dictatorship. It always happens this way. First, the ranks of the military and government, quote unquote, service are purged. Dissidents end up getting locked up or maligned or threatened and purged, and then it's the normal citizenry that it happens to. And we're seeing it all kind of happen at once with the gulag in DC for J6ers. And again, I feel like we always have to caveat this. We're not saying every single person who was involved on January 6th should just carte blanche walk away free. There were people who committed crimes that day, but there were also people who stayed behind the velvet ropes and walked through. And was it dumb? Yeah. Does it mean they go to prison? No, it absolutely should not. This is what a tyrannical government looks like. We're seeing it in real time.
Excellent. Well said. Yeah, well said. I want to, we're about to close it out here, folks, but I want to acknowledge final sponsor of the show for today, MyPillow. Kyle, I always tease him. He's the worst spokesman for MyPillow in history. He's a guy who's like, let's go ahead and order it. I've been told I am not. I'm also not a consumer of the MyPillow, but I've been told by people who are, Ryan, chief among them, that it's an excellent product. Make sure you use your promo code Kyle to get it. Yeah, Ryan, you get the slippers, right? That's what you got.
Yes, sir. I like the slippers.
And
nice.
and Mike Lindell. I mean, like, look, you agree with him or not on politics? That guy's willing to die on his shield as well. He's fighting for what he believes in, and he's paid a price for it. And I think that needs to be recognized, regardless of what your opinions are on what he's doing. I think it's worthy of praising true conviction when you see it. So folks, if you're going to go over there and you need to get that pillow every 12 months, get a refresher, use promo code Kyle. It benefits the show and helps the Suspendables out. And I want to finish out here on the Batman.
You didn't know this, but you just broke the all-time record for likes during a 1-hour live stream show. We just hit over 300. We've never done that before. Congratulations, man. Well, nice work.
Thank you very much. Hey, we actually we were able to sustain the weight of a loss of the host of the show, which means that we now have a strong case for the watch list, or whatever we're going to call it. Garrett, I just read the MyPillow ad. What do you think is going to be our first sponsor? I'm betting either on the stand-up bathtub or the hurricane.
I'm going to stand up bathtub. I like that.
All right, that's good. All right, we'll try to appeal to that. All right, right. The last video I want to show folks, and this is sort of a throwback to last week's comment that I made about clearing corners of teepees. It was an inside joke. We laughed about it afterwards. It might have been lost on the masses. Can you cue up video number 7 for me here? And this was actually from The Dark Knight Rises, but it's my favorite scene from all of the trilogy because of Commissioner Gordon. So go ahead and roll it.
So are you okay? Yeah. Police officer, I need your car right now.
Skip the coach, son.
Clear the corners, rookie. That's
Uh-huh.
right. That's right. Folks, if you do not know that, that's a basic principle of close quarter battle. You have to make sure you dig the corner when you go in. That's where the bad guy, that's where the real threat's going to be. Obviously, Robin there had not learned that lesson, even though he had ascended to become a detective, as is often the case. They get a little bit soft. And that's also why you don't need a backup to clear a teepee. There are no corners. But I'm glad that I had you here with me today, Garrett. I know if I had to run the rabbit, you would have my back as we cleared the corner on the corner fed room, right?
Yes, sir. Of course.
All right. Well, thanks, folks. Before we leave, I just want Garrett, why don't you plug your socials?
GOB Actual, pretty much everywhere. Twitter,
right.
Truth, Instagram, Substack, and then my Substack is lastline.substack.com, which there's been a little bit of an uptick recently. So I appreciate you all.
Excellent. Ryan, I know you're doing about like 18 different shows a day. I don't know when you sleep. Where can folks find you?
Ryan Matta Media on Twitter, Ryan Matta News on Instagram, Ryan Matta on Rumble. Thanks, Steve.
Hey, thanks for running the show today and dealing with the Garfunkel here. Folks, you can find me on Truth Social at @real_SteveFriend on Twitter/X at @RealSteveFriend. Book is True Blue, My Journey from Beat Cop to Suspended FBI Whistleblower. It's available on Amazon, or if you go to any of the Twitter, this True Social, it's pinned to the top of my profile. You can get your copy there and have some pleasure reading as we enter the Christmas holidays. Everybody have a blessed and safe weekend. Enjoy it, and we'll see you back here next week.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.